Hey everyone, JC here from PL Media. Before we start the podcast today, I wanted to take a second to let everyone know that today's episode contains some unrehearsed conversation that was not edited for content. We realize this might be a little unorthodox, but in the interest of transparency and in light of the viewpoints discussed, we've decided to release this in its entirety. We think the discussion is worth listeners hearing. That said, listener discretion is advised.
From the Pittsburgh Ledger, PL Media, and The Drop, this is a podcast exploring the accountability murders in Pittsburgh. I'm Julia Paige, and we're asking, who is Mullen?
Let's be real. Prop 87 isn't about justice and accountability. 87 is shoot first on steroids. It's tantamount to a license to kill.
Hi, it's me, Julia Paige, reporting for the Pittsburgh Ledger, welcoming you all back to the podcast. Joining me once again is the Ledger's Metro editor, Teddy Barstow.
Excited to be here. We have a big show for everyone today.
A lot has happened since our last episode, as all things No One and Richard Rowe seem to be heating up, so we should get right to it.
Then we're going to the big board, right?
Yes, the big board. At the very top is the news that Aaron Kern, otherwise known as Richard Rowe and the accountability killer, was released from police custody this week. After recanting his confession earlier this week, in a stunning turn, defense attorney Roger Dennehy asked Judge Akins to dismiss all charges against his client. And with District Attorney Foster reportedly unprepared to proceed, Judge Akins did just that and released Aaron Kern. At least right now, it looks like Kern won't face prosecution. How is this possible, Teddy?
Aaron Kern didn't get there alone. He had help.
Here's Pittsburgh DA George Foster.
But in light of recent events, namely the active copycat killer claiming to also be the original Richard Rowe, we were informed by Mr. Kern's attorney, Roger Dennehy, that the client is recanting his confession. They now maintain that said confession was coerced through physical intimidation. Given the lack of physical evidence against Mr. Kern and the questionable nature of his arrest, it is in the best interest of our office and, more importantly, the pursuit of justice to take a step back and reassess.
Front row, right here. DA Foster, does this mean Aaron Kern is no longer a suspect in the Richard Rowe murders?
It means we are taking a step back to reassess the case.
Attorney Foster, DA Foster here. And what about the attack on Senator Kemp and two police officers?
I can't comment on that. As Chief Mixon would also tell you, it's an ongoing investigation.
DA Foster, do you have any...
Some context here. Without physical evidence or witness testimony, the confession was their case.
The revolver was never recovered, and no chain of custody tied it to Aaron Kern. There was no physical evidence at all, actually.
Items were recovered at the Cary blast furnaces, and there were maps associated with each victim. But even so, there was no direct evidence that Aaron was the shooter.
Not to mention the call tipping the police off to Rowe's whereabouts was placed anonymously.
There's also no one's rumored participation in his capture. Remember, 2 eyewitnesses reported a No One sighting at the furnaces, and Edge News also reported anonymous police sources who said No One actually left Aaron restrained for police officers. Hence, DA Foster calling it a questionable arrest. If it sounds like we're making a case that Aaron Kern is innocent, we're not. Given what little we know, he seems to be the clear suspect in the first 3 accountability attacks. But the point is that without the confession, I can see where the DA would be reluctant to move forward.
Better to step back and reassess.
Honestly, when word of a confession surfaced, I think everyone, myself included, expected Aaron Kern to plead out and take whatever deal was offered.
And then the copycats happened.
Copycat 3, the self-proclaimed original Richard Rowe, with the same revolver used in the earlier attacks. Hours after the story broke that Aaron Kern recanted his confession and hired high-profile defense attorney Roger Dennehy, No One released audio allegedly recorded during one of Ben Kern's interviews with Aaron. We're going to play that for you now.
It took you long enough.
I made your mother a promise. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
How's Michael?
He wouldn't come.
I picked up on that. I meant, How's he doing? Is he somewhere?
He's using a gun.
Right. Is he okay? Besides?
I don't know, Aaron. He barely talks to me. I saw him today, but...
You spent all this time avoiding me. After the arrest, fine. I get it. Why are you really here? It's not for Mom. You missed her birthday before. Lots of times.
Last night, someone killed Louis Capel. They shot him 4 times in the chest at a gallery opening. The killer left behind 5 shell casings and a note.
So you want me to say I didn't do it? Of course, if you believe that, you would have shown up way before some bullshit copycat gave you a reason.
Never mind.
Dad, if you want me to say that you were a great cop and that none of this is your fault, just ask me. Well, I'm sorry I ruined what everyone thinks of you.
No one then followed this up with a statement aimed at Aaron Kern's new lawyer, Roger Dennehy.
Roger Dennehy, you protect the corrupt from consequence. You snatch justice from the wronged and rob the community of healing. For nothing more than prestige and luxury, I will not allow you to cheat the system again. You have 2 days. Recuse yourself from the Richard Rowe case. Tell the people of this city what laws you've broken, which officials and juries you've bribed and extorted to ensure comfort and liberty for the rich and guilty. Or I will. No one.
2 days later, No One doxed Dennehy with a list of major transgressions, from witness payoffs and bribery to jury tampering. Damning stuff, if true. But No One didn't stop there. After Kern's release, he dropped another statement condemning the DA's decision.
People of Pittsburgh, do not believe the liars, the entrenched powers, and moneyed interests. Trust your instincts. Aaron Kern is a murderer. Aaron Kern is guilty. Aaron Kern must face justice. I will see to this myself. Kern will be held accountable, returned to jail, and this copycat, determined to follow in Kern's footsteps, will join him. You have my word. No one escapes justice. Not anymore.
A promise, of sorts, that he must clearly intend to keep. We'll see. And that's all the updates. So, is it episode 5 already?
It is. We're deep in it now, Julia.
This episode is called Suspects, which is sort of fitting. At a time when the only suspect for the accountability murders, Aaron Kern, was just released from prison, and the copycat is both still at large and without any viable leads, this seems like a case with mounting questions and no answers. But that's not the focus of this episode, is it? Today, we're going to tackle the elephant in the room, something we haven't been able to get a handle on so far for a myriad of reasons. At the end of the day, as was brought to my attention...
By me?
By you, and some of our listeners, along with others, I've been reminded that this audio series is called Who Is No One? So, here we go. Without further ado, 3 possible no one suspects.
Right. So, in this episode, we're going to lean into our namesake. Thanks for the feedback and support. And we're finally going to offer some possibilities to consider. 3 suspects, if you will. But it's not as simple as picking a few names out of a hat, is it?
Even though that's what it feels like. But we have diligently sorted through the mountains of information and made our best guesses, using a reliable metric that does not, let me repeat, does not exclude our 3 potential suspects. That metric? Means, motive, and opportunity.
The trinity for all sleuths, and the 3 aspects of a crime needed to convince a jury of guilt in a criminal proceeding.
Sorry in advance for the Investigation 101, but it's important that we're clear in our intentions here. Means the ability of the suspect to actually commit the act, or acts. Given what we know about No 1, that means a male between 5'11 and 6'2", who is physically fit and an extremely gifted athlete. Someone with combat and hand-to-hand skills, tactical insertion evasion abilities, and with the tech resources and coding skills to dox sensitive personal information.
Batman, basically.
Teddy, this is serious.
I'm sorry. The point being that the means here excludes most of the population of Pittsburgh, you and me included.
It's a narrow field.
No one is also someone that seems to have inside information on cases. Perhaps a source in D.A. Foster's office or the police.
Right. Another limiting factor. Next, we have motive. The reason our suspect had to commit the acts. In this case, no one has been fairly transparent with direct communications. We've talked about this ad nauseum on the show. Data drops, audio messages, warnings, and even rebuttals to Richard Rowe.
Here's a guy that wholeheartedly believes there are people of means getting away with committing crimes to further their personal agendas, hurting society and abusing their power to get away with it. And he wants them to be held accountable, so he has a clear motive and mission statement.
Where it gets complicated is that seemingly his goal was to out the wrongdoers in a public forum to compel the justice system to hold them accountable.
And the fact that it didn't go as planned with the murders that followed doesn't change his motive.
He only appeared in person after the murders began, so you can say his motivation pivoted.
Or was forced to change.
Evolved, due to external factors beyond his control.
The Pandora's box he opened.
So, no one is a person trying to clean up a mess he created, which suggests that he has a conscience, an awareness of what his actions have sparked.
To account for what I've opened up in Pittsburgh.
His own words to you.
He's trying to be as accountable as the people whose misdeeds he found out.
Except that he wears a mask and calls himself no one, which implies what? That his identity doesn't matter? You ended episode 1 arguing the importance of the opposite, that his identity matters for accountability.
Our last Trinity element is opportunity, meaning, could he have actually done the thing?
For example, don't kill me, Batman has the means and maybe even the motive to be no one, but since he doesn't exist, he doesn't have the opportunity to do any of it.
Or put another way, opportunity is where alibis come in. If a crime was committed in Pittsburgh, but the suspect was in Gotham at the time, he didn't have the opportunity. Armed with those 3 criteria, we set out to find 3 viable suspects.
Our first suspect
is Donovan Kemp. The name should sound familiar to fellow Pittsburgh natives for 2 reasons. 1, he is a local 2-sport legend in basketball and football, an All-American point guard who twice took Penn to the NCAA Final Four. And the second reason, Donovan is the outspoken and sometimes controversial brother of State Senator Noah Kemp. A liberal-leaning activist, Donovan works with Progressive Action Now, a national resource and grassroots initiative dedicated to galvanizing people committed to economic fairness, equal rights for all, and civilian oversight of the justice system.
Donovan used his athletic accomplishments to put a face to an aggressively progressive movement.
A movement at odds with his conservative brother's pro-gun, anti-woke, preemptive self-defense stance.
The Proposition 87 trifecta, if you will. Jokes aside, there is a plausible path here to link Donovan to no one.
When we talk about means, he fits the description. Within the range of height and athleticism, if you were talking about people who could physically pull off no one, he certainly qualifies. As far as motive, Donovan's politics align pretty closely to no one's, so it's not a leap to connect those dots.
To that point, Donovan Kemp recently came out against Noah's Proposition 87.
We know that laws like these encourage armed vigilantism. The ideology of shoot first encourages the avoidable escalation of violence. It doesn't deter crime. Let's be real. Prop 87 isn't about justice and accountability. 87 is shoot first on steroids. It's tantamount to a license to kill.
So he's not afraid to come out against his brother.
And he sounds an awful lot like someone we know. No one who, if you recall, saved Noah Kemp from certain death from Richard Rowe. He was there. He intervened just in time to protect Donovan's brother.
Look, we may not agree on the issues, but I love my brother. And I was horrified by what happened to him. Especially when the police knew he was the next name on the list and did nothing to protect him. Noah getting shot in his own home? It crushed me.
But there's a but.
But I can't stay quiet and let his fear-mongering panic his constituents into turning our streets into a battlefield. PAN is committed to justice for all. And we won't stop until Prop 87 is defeated and our government answers for why men like Julian Colon and Lewis Capel are allowed to profit off the suffering of the people in the first place. Do I think what happened is right? No. It was heartbreaking and tragic. What happened to all of the victims, not just Noah. Nobody deserves to die like that. We don't have firing squads in this country. We have laws. And these maniacs out there killing people are another symptom in the breakdown of our society.
Telling stuff.
And right out of the No One playbook.
That leaves opportunity. Now here is where we did our extensive homework. Our due diligence to make sure each of our suspects could have actually done all the things that no one did. A process that was painstaking.
And exhausting.
But a necessary step. We charted all of no one's known movements around the city. Days, times, locations, every time he was ever seen. Then we created a timeline of events and used it to weigh against our suspects' known movements across the same time. And what we found in Donovan and our other two suspects was that all of them were in Pittsburgh. They all had the opportunity.
I know it sounds stalkerish, but we created timelines for every single suspect on our list, eliminating each person of interest who was verifiably elsewhere when no one was cited.
So there it is. Suspect number 1, Donovan Kemp. Now, before we move on, I just want to be clear, we have no direct evidence linking any of these suspects to no one. You won't hear me talk about specific connections because there are none.
Absolutely. As of now, we are operating with only means, motive, and opportunity, which brings us to
Vince Harmon of the Pittsburgh Police Office of Municipal Investigations. OMI, for short. This is the internal affairs unit that handles the Bureau's complaints. Harmon is a decorated police officer with 2 decades of experience who never had a complaint made against him before moving over to the OMI side.
To say he was a Boy Scout cop is an understatement. Harmon's a local hero. Not to sound flippant, but kind of a John McClane. The supermarket story, great place to start?
For sure. Probably fits within means, but a little context first. Before Vincent Harmon was a hero cop, he was an Army Ranger. Right out of high school, he saw combat in the Afghan War, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment.
McClane meets Rambo. All the Johns.
After multiple deployments and 8 years served, Harmon returned to Pittsburgh and joined the police, where he earned the nickname the Jeff, or JF, the Jagoff Fireman, because of the frequency with which he risked his own life to help others. By all accounts, Vince Harmon was fair and kind, well-liked by all. Even now, as an OMI investigator, not a single police officer had a bad word to say about him.
Nothing they'd put on record.
A good soldier. Sterling record as a police officer. And then came the Eagle Market shooting.
The supermarket, June 14th, 2017.
We're on the scene now. It's been 3 hours since gunfire erupted in the quiet Ridgemont shopping center. Police have confirmed now that at least 6 people were wounded and 5 are dead, including the gunman. At this time, police are not saying if the shooter took his own life, but have stated that events could have been much worse if not for the heroism of an off-duty police officer who engaged the gunman. There is a press conference scheduled for 7 a.m. We're hoping to get more answers and possibly the identity of the courageous officer who may have saved countless lives.
That off-duty officer, Vince Harmon.
He engaged the shooter and fatally shot him, likely saving the lives of dozens of shoppers still trapped inside the store.
The man was a hero, and clearly has the means.
Motive is a little trickier. I'm connecting the dots a bit, but it seems like the reason that no one has a cross thing to say about Vince is because he doesn't say much. Not publicly. Certainly not on the record. He's a man with 0 social media presence, whose only statements in the public record are about as controversial as a Derek Jeter interview. And those that we talk to say the same thing. Man of few words who'd rather keep his mouth shut than speak ill of others.
That said, in reading his depositions, testimony, and investigative reports that often condemn the actions of fellow officers, he seems to call it like he sees it. No soft-pedaling, just fair and accurate reporting of events. Could have been a good newsman.
It doesn't speak directly to motive, but his demeanor would make a kind of sense when you think about the type of personality no one appears to have. Despite the voice modulation, they're very even-keeled. They're also someone who is probably good at deflecting suspicion. What better way to deflect suspicion than actually being a cop? Or even simpler, maybe no one, is how Harmon deals with these unresolved issues deep inside. Is it speculation? Of course. But without direct evidence, isn't that what we're doing?
Hey, we're not just making shit up. His motive may not be as obvious as Kemp's, but it's there if you look for it, and he has the means and the same opportunity.
So he's our number 2. Last and definitely least. Hey, you signed off on this. Don't get cold feet now.
Fine. Now, for those of you in the chatterverse stuck on the idea that Aaron Kern's brother, Michael Kern, is no one, sorry to disappoint, but he's not on our list. Because he's dead. Murdered by the copycat, his second victim, if you remember. And nothing in our research has led us to think otherwise. All that said, our third suspect
is Pittsburgh Ledger reporter Alejandro Rios.
Full disclosure, Rios was recently put on administrative leave pending a new police inquiry into a potential connection to no one. Of course, there is no presumption of guilt.
Hey, if he's good enough to be on the police's radar, I guess he's good enough for us. Now, does Alejandro have the means? Probably. He fits the physical description and is in great shape, if I'm being honest. A self-proclaimed fitness nut, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on paper, sure. He works.
Don't oversell it.
Stop. Motive? A little light there, too. Mostly because he strikes me as a little fluid on the issues.
Julia, if that's how you're going to do this, why name
Alejandro Rios. Means gym nut, jiu-jitsu master. Motive. He never said he wasn't no one. That's great. So, in fact, off the record, he once insinuated to me that he could be. Sure. So he does seem to have a knack for scooping reporters when it comes to the no one of it all.
JC, why don't we take 5? I think we can use a break.
Now, how about we wrap it up? Alejandro Rios, not a perfect fit, but he does meet our opportunity criteria. It could have been him every time. And jiu-jitsu, so... I'm sorry. Because if it sounds like I'm a little frustrated, it's because I am. Full disclosure, if you haven't guessed, it's true that I've had my reservations making this list because I know that it is too soon and we don't have enough on Alejandro or anyone else. But this is a job, and there are people that I answer to. Hi, Teddy. Hi, JC. So here we are. And we did our best. We spent a lot of hours researching, checking the facts, talking to sources. And so if at the end of the day, these are our 3 most informed guesses, then so be it. I wouldn't bet my life on any of them, and neither should you. Think about this. We opened with news of the release of Aaron Kern, a man who, after being caught hiding out, confessed to the crimes he is no longer being charged with. He said he did it, and then he said he didn't. So now he is free. Why? Because there is no physical evidence tying him to the crimes. No eyewitnesses. Now, prosecutors have done more with less, but this case is thin. Really thin. And it doesn't meet the standard the DA feels will get a conviction. So with all of their resources, they folded their cards. So think about that when you consider the names we gave you today. One last tidbit for you. Please also remember this. There's a difference between being a suspect and being the accused. It takes a hell of a lot more proof to be charged with a crime and tried before a jury of your peers than it does to be named on a podcast.
Jesus, Julia.
To read more about No One, head to blackmarket.la. Who is No One is produced in partnership with Black Market Narrative and ZQ Entertainment.
Black Market Narrative.